I would like to welcome you to the fourth Winds of Change event. My name is Ana Ayala and I will be moderating tonight's discussion. Winds of Change, the World We Envision, will allow us to learn about different issues that are going on in the world. But most importantly, we are here today to grow and learn as global citizens. Winds of Change is an event organized and led by FDU students. Being part of a school that is the leader in global education, events and students like this are what makes us different and unique. The importance of being a global citizen is crucial nowadays. Winds of Change will encourage you to get out of your bubble and explore other countries, other cultures, and most importantly, realize that not everyone has the opportunity to be here today and be where you are. Tonight, we have the opportunity to listen the opinion of 8 different students with different backgrounds, students who truly represent a global community and global education. All of the students speaking tonight come from different countries, but they all have something in common. They all want a better future for their generation and the next generations, as well as a better future for their countries. The voice of youth is extremely important in every country. Youth is the future of our countries, of our world, and the best way to have a successful future. It's with education and with young people who aren't afraid to fight for their rights and freedom. Now, Dr. Rafalidis will give us an introduction to the event.
Thank you, Anna, and distinguished panel members. You represent the global community in every way. I think one of the more endearing things about the issues are that they are identical irrespective of the country that you're talking about. And you would get a very good composite of what the global issues are if we look at any of these representatives and the particular countries that they are concerned about. Obviously, preparation for life and work, education, the environment, security are critical issues. And this is their program, so I'm not going to really take much time. I simply want them, as well as you, to be encouraged to think about the future in a way that embraces the possibilities, so that there are a number of things that come to mind. First, I'd like you to imagine what conceivable global futures are possible, because there are a variety of them. Second, estimate which are the most probable. And third, consider what policies would be helpful in bringing about the ones you find preferable. But to do that, you need to consider other factors. And these include things like the states that we live in. Each student here is linked to a particular state, a particular culture. And that's an interesting breakdown of the global community, and it's a reality. So what we need is to consider the notion about, will the state remain the primary actor in world politics? Because essentially, that's what drives the engine for change. Secondly, is globalization an issue for advancement, or is it irreversible in the sense of the kind of things that people complain about resulting from globalization? Third, will technological innovation solve pressing global problems? We've come to the idea that technology will deal with all the problems that the future brings. Fourth, are cultural differences the new fault lines on the geostrategic landscape? Just as states tend to divide us, so too are the cultural lines that sometimes cross states, but also tend to divide us. And there are so many things that unite us, and particularly the vision that the youth have across the globe. Finally, is the world preparing for the wrong kind of wars? And I leave that in quotation marks for your consideration. And with that, I will turn it over to Anna, and she will introduce the panel members.
The speakers tonight are going to be talking alphabetical order based on their countries. And our first speaker will be Weiqi Yang from China.
Good evening, everyone. I'm from China, and my name is Weiqi Wang. Tonight, I'm going to talk about a really serious China's air pollution crisis, which just took place in November last year. First, let's take a glance at those cities before they were affected by the toxic haze crisis. They are beautiful, as you can recognize. The first picture is Great Wall, and the second picture is Shanghai. And now let's look the following pictures. This is so terrible, you can't imagine. And some people just said it's harder to walk around the block than climbing a mountain in such a dense haze. The two main causes of this crisis are coal consumption and factories and vehicle toxic emissions. China's big industrial cities are learning the hard way, and I think this is also a lesson that rapid economic growth comes at a great price. The serious toxic has brought about both short-term and long-term impacts, which the short-term impact are school closure, grounding flights, closing highways, and deterring tourists. And there's also agriculture professionals also stated that the toxic air pollution slow the photosynthesis in plants, potentially will affect the country's food supply. And for the long-term consideration, people are more easily to get heart disease, stroke, respiratory illnesses, and cancer. Another impact, which is global ozone layer depletion, which brings the China's air pollution crisis to a global issue. Many evidences has shown that this crisis is spreading internationally. The sulfur dioxide and the nitrogen oxides fall as acid rain on Seoul, South Korea, and Tokyo. And according to the Journal of Geographical Research, the pollution even reaches Los Angeles in the US. Winter storms above the Northwest Pacific are directly downstream from Asian pollution outflows. So let's make a bold guess. The snowstorms took place not too long ago, as everyone just remembered so many snowstorms, were partly caused by China's air pollution, I think. Since the burning coal will emit aerosols, This kind of pollution reflects sunlight, resulting in a cooling effect. And here is a table which expresses how serious the air pollution was. This table shows from December the 2nd to December 14th, 2003, some capital cities' air quality index. As you can see, the purple one stated the low to medium polluted, and the pink one stated the heavily polluted, and the red one seriously polluted. As you can see, there are all pink, purple, and red on this table. In facing this situation, China's government came up with both short-term and long-term solutions. The short-term solutions including shut polluting factories and limiting the number of cars. And for the long-term solution, government encourages people to cut the usage of coal by 2% per year, which I consider is not so possible, but we'll try. Also, the government carried out a 5-year action plan which stresses the improvement of technology, planning, and regulation. Another aspect of this plan is making pollutant pay and rewarding the emissions reduction efforts. I think everyone has the responsibility to protect our environment and encourage sustainable development. From my perspective, there are at least 2 things we can do. The first is try to use the environmental friendly energy, such as solar energy. The second one is increases the chances of taking public transportations, reducing the chances of driving. We can begin from ourselves and make the world a better place to live. Thank you.
Our second speaker of the night is Noha El Mesiri from Egypt.
Hello everyone, I'm Noha from Egypt, and I'm going to talk to you about the lack of democracy in Egypt. Or more importantly, is democracy really that important to what happens in Egypt? So the title of my presentation is Egypt and the Pharaohs. If you look it up in the dictionary, the word pharaoh can mean one of 2 things: either the ruler of ancient Egypt, or a tyrant, or someone who uses power to oppress others. So the rulers of Egypt, since Egypt is very old, we've had countless kinds of rulers. We've had pharaohs, emperors, walis or khalifas, sultans, kings, and finally, in 1952, we got our independence and we had the first president. Right now, we have a temporary president since July 2013, and there's an upcoming election in March this month. And okay, so who's going to win this? It can go in 4 directions: either the military, or the Muslim Brotherhood, or the old regime, which the revolution happened just to get rid of, or someone who actually cares about the people, which is what we want, obviously. But what I want to talk about is, even if we do get a president by fair elections, is that what democracy is all about? Everybody hates dictatorship, of course. They say everyone has the right to choose who rules them, or have to say their opinion about policies and stuff like that. But then again, we have a very big percentage of ignorance in Egypt. And I'm not talking just about illiteracy or anything like that, but people who are close-minded and listen to the government as if they would never lie to them. No way. They read the newspapers and watch the TV and think that anything said there is true. We have a percentage of poverty, and let me tell you how that affects the elections. Almost every election, around that time, there will be some sort of organization or party that would go around for these poor places and give out free food. So naturally, they would win the alliance of, or the votes of these people. Okay, now let's assume there were no bribery, no blackmail, we had no forgery, fair elections. There's something about the distribution of power that prevents even this from being democracy. The president of Egypt has way too much power, in my opinion. And still, in other positions, he has too little power. He can have too much power because even though we have a Congress, nearly everything is up to the president. He can just decide to remove the Congress and start new votes. I'm not sure about the exact, like how that happens, the policies around that, but you'd be just one day, you'd find that there's no more Congress, they're going to start anew because there was some sort of policy, the president wanted something, whatever. He just has absolute control over everything. And yet he has too little power sometimes because he's tied with, his ties with foreign countries. Sometimes he has to make choices, whether he wants it or not, I don't know, but that are not in the good interest of Egypt. So what's the solution for that? My solution is three things. Hope that, we have to hope that Egypt will get through this, that someday we'll get someone who actually cares about Egypt, and because like giving up hope is like just declaring Egypt dead, and everyone's trying to get out of the country, and it's like there's no hope here. The other thing is to act. And by acting, I don't mean just politicians. I don't mean just demonstrating and protesting, which is getting more and more dangerous as they had this protest ban law last year. But I'm talking about regular people like me, students, even people from different professions. And how can they act? I think the hope for the future lies with the youth. And that's why if we educate the children, we fix the education system, we teach them about ethics. These are the Egyptians of the future. They're, of course, the Egyptians now, but Egypt is going to be in their hands in the future. They're going to be the future politicians, the future doctors, the future teachers. So I say we start with the youth. We make sure they grow up to be good people. If 70% of today's children grow up to be good people, ethical people, people who are actually aware of what's going on and care about it, then we have 70% chances of getting a president who actually cares. We have 70% chance to fix what's happening in Egypt right now. So I'm saying democracy is really overrated, at least in Egypt. And that's my opinion. It does not apply to everyone in Egypt, of course. But we just have to work, everyone in their own field, not just the people in charge. And thank you.
Our next speaker is Rohan Maheshwari from India.
Thank you, Anna. And I would just like to take this chance to, take this opportunity to thank the Office of Global Learning for holding this event. I think it's very informative and very good for even the panelists to learn about different countries. So today, in this short time that we have, I want to give you an overview of the Sino-Indian relationship, that is the relationship between India and China, and how this will make or break how the Eastern world plays out in the 21st century in the future that we all will be a part of. So basically, first I want to start off with a brief history of where we are coming from, because I believe that our history is a linear expression of our future. So India and China have been one of the most ancient civilizations. They have histories that go back over 5,000 years. But we also, more recently, we changed with our sovereignty. So in 1947, India got its democratic independence, and China became the People's Republic of China in 1949. And ever since then, we've been on a road which is pretty much similar. China's been a little bit quicker in their economic development than us, but we're going towards the same patterns in our development with democracy, with population. India went with democracy, they went in another different channel with that. And we became very ambitious in space, science, technology, and economic centralized planning. We also have some cultural ties with Buddhism and trade and the Silk Road and stuff like that. So first we look at where we start off in our new kind of world. So we start off with what is very important, is called the Panchsheel. The Panchsheel was an agreement which was signed between India and China on May 15, 1954. And the 5 important points of this relationship between us was the mutual respect for our territories, mutual non-aggression, non-interference in internal affairs of each other's country, equality and mutual benefits, and peaceful coexistence. And this was something very important because there were some issues which are coming up, which I'll talk about later with border control and stuff like that. So we agreed on these topics in the beginning. In 1959, we had a sort of a dispute with Tibet when China was interested in Tibet, and the Dalai Lama got asylum in India. So that kind of made the relationships a little bit sour. In 1962, there was a war that erupted between the two countries because of the Himalayan land crisis. So there were some places in China that were in India which China wanted to administer, and they had some disagreements between who would take the land. So, but shortly after, in 1976, relationships became a little bit better, and since then we have progressed coming towards normalcy and neutrality. So Rajiv Gandhi paid a visit to China the first time in 1990s, and that was the first visit in 34 years. More recently, though, Chinese Premier Wen Jiabao visited Bangalore. Bangalore is a city in Mumbai, to address some of the issues and he really paid attention on the youth of the two countries and how they interrelate with each other. Ever since then, we've had a lot of meetings between the two countries, and the bilateral dialogue has been pretty good. We visit each other, and the main factor that affects this is the economic trade that goes on between us, which is exceeding now $50 billion, which is the biggest factor. And also now, more recently, they're having border discussions. Actually, the meeting took place in February, where they had some strategic talks about the border disputes that have been going on over the last 50 years or so. So these are some of the places in India that China kind of claims. It's Arunachal Pradesh, it's in the northeast, and there was actually a lot of uproar when the Indian Prime Minister actually visited this place, and the Chinese expressed they didn't like that he did. And the other place is Aksai Chin, which is the northeastern corner of Kashmir. But the good news in this is that they are having a constructive meetings regarding these topics with the Border Defense Cooperation Agreement recently. So hopefully that goes for the better. Here's a quick comparison, or a small table between the two countries. You'll see that there's a lot of, with the population, they are very close. India is 1.2 billion. Well, these numbers are approximate. And then China is 1.3 billion. So together they make up 1/3 of the global population of the world. The capital of India is New Delhi, and for China it's Beijing. Our current leaders, our GDP, China has a GDP of $8.2 trillion, nominal GDP, and India has 1.8, and the military expenditures. When we look at the trade relationships between the two countries, they're very important trade partners because they provide for almost 1/4 of the global skilled labor workforce. So there's been a lot of financial dialogues between them regarding the trade policies between the two countries, and those have taken place from April 2006 to September 2013, and more recently in 2014 is going to take place in India. So China is the biggest trade partner for India, so it's very important for India to have very good relationships with China, because a lot of goods and services get traded between them. And the latest numbers as of 2011 was 74 billion, and it increases as we go in the future. And they hope that, Manmohan Singh, the Prime Minister of India, hopes that the relationships increase to a level where we have 100 billion trade with each other by the time we go to 2015, which looks very likely. There's a lot of common challenges when you look at India and China together. One is corruption. India, in my belief, is crippled by a lot of corruption because it's at every level of our government. Bureaucracy is always there. And more recently, China has been, with the new government, they've been cracking down on their corruption, but they also face the same problems. Poverty, there's a very big difference in the people who are very rich and very poor in the country because the poorest people are not able to afford very, very basic amenities, but the rich people have a lot more. So there's a lot of difference between the social strata and the hierarchy of the income. There's a lot of inequality between them. Overpopulation in China is now being addressed, and it's hit its sweet spot or the saturation point as it goes down. But India is still not taking care of their population problem, and it is looking like it's going to keep growing. It's estimated that around 2025 or 2030 that the two populations will switch and India will become the most populous country, whereas China will start to settle down and go towards their falling or a stable state. Pollution is a big problem, as our co-panelist Weiqi mentioned. In China, it's more big of a problem than India, but I think that since India is also very industrious, it's going to be a problem for us soon. So as we can see that we have a lot of overlapping issues and challenges as we go into the 21st century, and I think that cooperation between the two countries regarding these problems together will help us in the future. So I just want to conclude by saying that China and India will play a very big role in the 21st century. They face very similar challenges, but at the same time, they're very fundamentally different in their democratic and communist styles. As I mentioned before, they make for 1/3 of the world's population and 1/4 of the skilled labor force. So for the road ahead, there's mutual benefit in cooperation rather than competition. And to sustain their prosperity in the 21st century, I think they need to celebrate what they have, what differences they have, and embrace their similarities and work on them together through bilateral and economic dialogue. Then I think that if they're able to continue and try to solve their border issues by making some compromise on both sides, which is easier said than done, they will be able to go in the future together and sustain Asia as a big player in the future of the world.
Our next speaker is Camilla Kernis from Italy.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Camilla Kernis, and I am an exchange student from the University of Bergamo in Italy. Today, I want to talk about an issue that has become an ever more preoccupying phenomenon through the past years, and that is femicide, the killing of women for simply being women. Let's zoom into the measure of emergency. As you can see, almost 7 million women aged 16 to 70 have been victims of physical or sexual abuse, and 1 million of them have been victims of actual or attempted rape. Overall, 14.5% of Italian women have been victims of violence at the hand of their partner. As you can see, in the past 3 to 4 years, the numbers have significantly risen, peaking at 129 femicides in 2009, with an average of 1 woman killed every 2.5 days from 2009 through 2013. Unfortunately, 2014 isn't prospecting to be any better. Most shocking was what occurred during International Women's Day, March 8, 2014. Silvia Spaziali, which was 46, was murdered by her husband, who first hit her with an iron bar and then threw her down the stairs. Assunta Siciliano, 43, was stabbed by her husband for ending their relationship. Ofelia Bontoyu, 28, had her throat slit by her boyfriend for not wanting to move with him to London. Our research looked into the motives that drove femicides and established that separation, refusal, and jealousy are accountable for the highest percentages. Unfortunately, the ailing economy and the volatile political stability that ultimately impacted on personal economies caused over 10% of the femicides. Prime Minister Enrico Letta introduced a decree to be effective immediately in August 2013. This decree consisted of measures that set tougher penalties for the perpetrators of domestic violence against women and femicide. And it consisted of irrevocable lawsuit, mandatory arrest in flagrante, immediate estrangement from the household, faster judiciary lane and free advocacy, and resident permit for foreign victims who are often the victims of these femicides and have nowhere to go because they're not citizens of Italy. Victims and their defenders, although appreciative of the attentions that are drawn to this long neglected issue, contend that Italy does not only need tougher laws, but a better organized and better financed network of psychological, legal, and financial assistance for women that decide to leave an abusive relationship. As endorsed by a Council of Europe task force, each country should provide a help center for a woman and her children every 10,000 citizens. According to this, Italy should provide 5,700 centers, but only disposes of 500, most of which are dying due to lack of funding. In Lazio, for example, which is one of the central regions of Italy, which also includes the capital, Rome, only has one shelter that can host 3 women at a time for a maximum of 6 days. These facts underscore the severe structural flaws and should serve as an impetus to review the entire decree in order to better serve abused women who are in need. So far, we're grateful for the small improvements that we're making, but for a safer future, we have to work on establishing better facilities and resources to help women that are abused and have nowhere to go. I would like to end this presentation with this short video.
By refusing to live in ignorance.
By not condoning negative attitudes towards women in society.
By using their voice to promote human rights in every aspect of their lives.
By understanding that the force is not the best way to show your strength, character, or impose your own point of view.
By standing firm and fighting against any kind of harassment at workplace.
By stop bullying their classmates, not only in school but even on Facebook.
By joining organizations that empower girls.
By taking action. By teaching their peers not to become aggressors.
By changing their own attitude towards discriminatory and stereotype values.
By uniting together and providing assistance to the victims.
By participating in outreach programs and creating awareness.
By growing up to be responsible and respectful fathers and husbands.
By adopting a policy of zero tolerance.
Thank you very much, Camila. Our next speaker is going to be Abdullah Al-Asuzi from Kuwait.
First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for being here and the panelists for giving me a chance to speak. Before I start, I want to ask all of you to interact with me first, and I want to see how many of you did not know what Kuwait was or don't know what Kuwait is? Of course, it's a country. Like, have you ever heard of it? Okay, great. So you all know. don't be embarrassed if you don't. It's fine. A lot of people don't know what it is or don't know where it is or all that. Okay, so if and when you heard Kuwait, did you think about deserts, camels, sands, and tent? All right, it's normal. It's normal. Okay, so I'll start with telling you that Kuwait is a constitutional monarchy in the Gulf, which lies in the Middle East. It's on the Arabian Gulf. It's often described as the most liberal country in the region. Kuwait has the 5th largest oil reserves in the world. It's the 3rd richest country in the world per capita, and it's classified as a high-income economy by the World Bank. Kuwait is part of the GCC, which is a similar idea to the European Union. The GCC is the Gulf Cooperation Council, and it has the United Arab Emirates, which is the first flag, Kuwait, the second flag, Saudi Arabia, the third flag, Qatar, the flag under, Bahrain, and Oman. 4 of the countries that lie in this region are, 4 of them, are in the top 10 richest countries in the world due to the oil reserves that they have. The other 2 are in the top 20, top 30 at most. Because of the oil and because of what we found in the early 60s, early 50s, people have started to live in a life of luxury. These are hotels on Jumeirah Beach Resort. It's in Dubai. Of course, all of you heard of Dubai. And that's the Avenues Mall, which is one of the biggest malls in the world, largest malls, and that's called Prestige. This is a picture of a Kuwaiti car in London. So it's a Lamborghini. So when Kuwaitis go on vacations, or these Gulf people go on vacations, they take their expensive cars with them. That's a skyline of Kuwait. All that's just a background of Kuwait. Now, when I want to tell you what the problem is that people in Kuwait and the Gulf have been over-reliant on oil. I'm not a person that's pessimistic. I'm not the person that wants to make this region sad. But oil is not going to last us more than 100 years. So, Kuwait's land is only 10% of it is used. The other part is all free land. And we have 2.2 million immigrants that are considered a cheap source of labor. By the way, Kuwait is 1.2 million Kuwaitis. So there's 2.2 million immigrants and 1.2 million Kuwaitis. Kuwait is making so much surplus that it's basically the money that it's making, it doesn't know we don't know what to do with it. Like the most recent example is we gave Egypt $4 billion as a gift because of the regime support. So today when I talk to you about Kuwait, I want to tell you how can we change it from becoming an oil reliant country to a country that's going to make its own money far away from oil. So I want to talk to you about the Taiwan model and what we can do to implement our Kuwait into the Taiwan model. Of course, he's laughing because I talked to him about it before. So the Taiwan model is, of course, I don't know if all of you know about it, but it was just a small military group that got away from China, went to the island that's right next to China, started industrializing, making money because they wanted to build their army. Through doing so, the government incentivized the people to have a strong economy, and now Taiwan in 40 years is one of the strongest economies in the world. So what we want to do here in Kuwait is that in Kuwait and the Gulf, there's a huge number of immigrants, there's a lot of money, definitely there's a lot of money, and there's a lot of land. So what's stopping us from going and implementing the Taiwan model into the Gulf model? What we want to do is that we want to start businesses and start companies and start factories with low wage workers and pay them even more than what they are paid right now to make better products. What we need to focus on is not making products and selling them cheap. What we need to focus on is making products and selling good products. What I mean by good products is that something that you guys actually want to use, not buy it and then 2 weeks later you're going to have to go buy something else. How can we do that? The scare right now is that, okay, I'll open this factory. Let's say I'll open it in Kuwait. I'll hire so many people. I'll start making the product. Let's say I sell this product for $10. What scares me is that China or Taiwan or all of Asia is going to be selling it for $2. How can I avoid that? It's going to take many years. It's going to take a lot of money, but fortunately we have both of them. This is what Taiwan did. It took them years, it took them money, and they implemented it. So what we're going to do is that we're going to make that product, we're going to sell it internally into all of the Gulf, and then make it strong enough to be able to compete with the world market. How can I do that? I'm going to lose millions, billions. That doesn't mind. That they don't care. The money is so much that oil, the budget only of Kuwait, the budget of Kuwait is based on $70 per gallon. And today we're selling the gallon of oil for $115, $120. That's a $45 per gallon surplus. And daily they're selling 3.2 million gallons, daily. So today we have to be starting to think that we have to stop relying on oil and start shifting our focus on something other than oil. I know like countries like Abu Dhabi, Qatar, and Bahrain have started focusing their focus on tourism, but also tourism is not going to last us very long because like we know, every other couple of years you're going to see a new tourist spot. So I'm going to go sit back right now and I'll wait for you guys to ask me questions, and I hope I can answer you. Thank you.
Our next presenter is Ruby Karki from Nepal.
Hello, everybody. I'd like to thank you all for coming here and giving us an opportunity to share our experiences and thoughts. And I hope it's a learning experience for all of us. My name is Ruby Karki, and I'm from Nepal. We're a least developed country in South Asia. We're landlocked, but we're one of the most gifted countries in terms of potential for hydropower. We're a small country sandwiched between the two giants, India and China, both of which we had panelists from. And we have had, over the past few decades, a 10-year civil war, a coup by the monarchy, revolution, and many, many years riddled with political and social instability. This has obviously had a great impact on the youth and working age population of our country, if to say nothing about the havoc that has been wreaked on any infrastructure that we had to speak of. Nepal has the 10th highest unemployment rate in the world, which is 46% of unemployed people in our country, which translates into a huge brain drain in the country for anybody that is fortunate enough to have a decent education, and a huge influx into the diaspora of non-skilled immigrant workers, especially into wealthy Middle Eastern states. The amount of suffering that has been experienced by these workers has been a very troubling phenomenon for all of Nepal. It is estimated that in the building of the FIFA infrastructure in Qatar, a reported 400 Nepali workers have succumbed to death due to the deplorable working conditions. And the lack of outcry for their situation is not only because of the poverty that they themselves experienced in Nepal, which caused them to move out and look for work, but also due to the fact that there is very little being done on the part of the Nepalese government to lobby or look out for the interests of these workers that have gone out and experience such deplorable conditions. And the majority of Nepal meets their ends through farming. But over the last few decades and the onset of global warming, hundreds of thousands of farmers, close to millions, have suffered due to massive floodings, droughts, and other natural disasters. The young farmers that are going to inherit the country have little to no support and security for their livelihood besides what they receive from civil society and NGOs. 80% of Nepal makes their income, their sustenance through farming, and the sustainability of farming and food security in the region and in the country is of utmost importance, and it is being overlooked, not only by the government, but by all the parties that are invested in the country. And Nepal is 157th in the world in terms of gender equality, which is one of the most fundamental problems faced by our generation and the ones to come. Gender inequality translates into a major maternal health problems, an incredibly high infant mortality rate, and a lack of guarantee of education for the next generation. Among the many groups that are marginalized in Nepal, women have been on the receiving end of much of it. Most recently, in the past few years, women have had increased representation in the government through a mandatory 33% representation in the parliament. However, that usually translates to just lip service, as socially speaking, there is a huge disparity between the rights and privileges that are experienced by women and men in terms of like differences. Sorry. Girls' education is one of the most fundamental things that need to be focused on if the future of our country is to be like bright. Gender discrimination in education has been one of the hardest problems that women and society in general have had to face in Nepal, because more often than not, people prefer to send their sons to school and not their daughters. And when they grow up, they continue the cycle with their own family in the gender discrimination on who they choose to educate. And uneducated mothers means uneducated women that are unaware of their own health issues, unaware of their children's health issues, unaware of the importance of the importance of the role that they play in building society in Nepal. And without giving these women the tools to help themselves and their families, we are shortchanging our future in the sense that we're not allowing people to give themselves a chance or their children. Nepal is a member of the least developed countries in the world. As you can see in the map, they're all highlighted in blue. And these 49 countries, with South Sudan being the most recent addition into us, we all face a number of problems that are very similar. We struggle with the guarantee of the most basic human rights, human security, food security, and the dreams of our youth for our future is deeply intertwined with whether or not there is safe employment, guaranteed employment, food security, human security, or political stability, which seems very basic when you look relatively to like the developed world, but it is a huge struggle and an uncertainty in the horizon of our future. Thank you.
Our next presenter will be Sophie Adeyemo from Nigeria.
Hello everyone, how are you doing today? Good afternoon, good evening I should say. My name is Sophie Adeyemo, and like Anna said, I'm from Nigeria. Thank you all very much for being here today and just hearing the panel out and all our opinions on these different controversial topics going on in our countries. Today I'm here to actually talk about Nigeria and more specifically the oil issues that are actually going on over there. Excuse me. In Nigeria, towards the southern part of the area is the Niger Delta. And the Niger Delta has been a cause for environmental issues dealing with oil spills. Now, as a lot of you do know, In the United States, there have currently been an oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico and in 2010. And that became cause for a national uproar because it affected the waters, it affected the animals, and it became an issue especially for the major oil company, BP. A lot of people protested against them, a lot of people banned, or they were reprimanded in numerous amount of ways. Now in Nigeria, there's current oil spills going on by numerous oil corporations that exist here and other parts of the world, such as Mobil, Chevron, Shell, Elf, and many more. And the concern is that because there's an oil reserve in that area, we have lots of these big businesses pretty much taking advantage of Nigeria and having many, individuals that stand for them go into those areas and take oil. However, it's not a matter of just taking oil. They're spilling oil and destroying the environment over there. Nigeria Delta, as like I mentioned, is one of the richest areas in oil and biodiversity, and the regular oil spill that's been going on in that area is damaging and also affecting the people in the area's health. The government is one of the main issues with this ongoing problem. The corrupt government is aiding in this issue because we have many oil companies coming into the area, and they are not only ignoring the people's concerns and worries, but they're also benefiting from it financially. So they have no concern for it because they know they're going to get money from it at the end of the day. Oil is becoming an ongoing issue, as I mentioned, and pretty much the government is aiding in it with no stop in the future. At least that's what it seems like in the 21st century. Oil companies have done many things, such as they've paid off government officials. They've also paid off individuals and tried to sweep them under the rug through numerous ways. For example, Shell has been criticized for dividing communities and paying them off and some of the members to disrupt non-violent protests. So many citizens have been protesting, concerned about their health, concerned about numerous things, and the oil companies are just trying to, ignore them, sweep it under the rug, and assortment of other things. Right now, I feel like the main problem going on in Nigeria with this oil issue and the oil spill issue is the systematic flaw in maintaining and also controlling how this oil is being taken. I feel like a lot of the times what happens is there's no regulation as to how much can you take, when can you take it, are you being careful in how it's being taken? And I feel like a lot of these oil corporations, which are mainly based in, in Western areas, don't care for Africa as a whole. So they're not truly concerned about its environmentalists because they know its people don't have as loud as a voice as a lot of their Western countries. So what happens is they go in and they do what they want and they leave without care or concern for what happens. I feel like the biggest solution to fixing this is putting in place enforcement laws that allow fines to be put in place. If you spill a particular amount of barrel, you should be fined for that. I feel like that's the best way to ensure that these issues don't occur and continue to persist. When you hurt the pockets, these problems start to decrease. You put fines in place, these issues start to decrease. So that's my solution to this ongoing problem, and hopefully, I feel like if this were to be put in place, that Nigeria would have a better chance in coming up as an environmental vision to the world, and not only that, just enrich not only its location, but also the rest of the world as far as them solving this problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Our last speaker of the night is going to be Alfredo Malaret from Venezuela. You're welcome to stay. We're going to have an open question and answer session for all the speakers after Alfredo is done.
Hello. I want to talk about Venezuelan students' manifestations, political jiu-jitsu, I'll explain that later, military repressions, and Latin American free of military. It will be quick, I promise. Hugo Chavez rose to power in 1999 under the premise of 21st century socialism. Since that year, Venezuela has witnessed a decrease in oil production. Moreover, inflation has risen a total of 350%, and only in the last year it has gone up to 56%. Now it's under the president of Nicolás Maduro. Scarcity of basic products is tearing apart the most basic foundations of society. More than 25% of basic goods are simply absent. There's no toilet paper, no toothpaste, no diapers, and no milk for the babies. No medical supplies or even medicines for the sick, the very basic. With such an economic debacle, our currency has been knocked out of any relevance. Caracas, the capital, has become the kidnap capital of the world, and life has been pretty much ruled worthless. But this is the one that really gets to me. And I ask you, please don't look at this chart as an statistics. Since Chavez took power in 1999, there's a 444% murder increase. That's the highest in the world. That makes Caracas the most dangerous place in the world. From less than 5,000 in 1999 to almost 25,000. That's an unbelievable amount of numbers. And I ask you not to look at this as statistics, because it's more than that. This is people. And this is empty chairs. This is kids without their parents and parents without their kids. More than 92% of the murders go unresolved. That's how much confidence Venezuelans have in the government. And this is where I go with political jiu-jitsu. The students' demonstration in Venezuela are protesting because of this. They're an example of courage. They not only resist against a powerful status quo, but they resist with non-violence. The military forces are trained to repress. Civil disobedience looks to transfer the basis of support. And what do I mean by that? Is that the government stands on a couple bases of support, and you weaken their bases. You don't want to destroy them, you just weaken them, and then you transfer to your basis of support. We do not return tear gas, pellets, or live rounds with violence. Instead, we throw flowers at them. We coerce the brutal repressive forces. We strive to make them understand that we are victims of the same system, and we try to bring the military to our side. You do not fight your enemy with their best weapons. They have guns, we have brains. And this is what I mean with political jiu-jitsu. You gotta outsmart them. You gotta turn their weapons against them. They have repressive weapons, they have hard weapons. This is a 22-year-old student, a beauty queen. Her name is Genesis Carmona. She was protesting in February when she was shot dead. And what I mean by political jiu-jitsu is that this picture making its way through the world, showing the world what's really happening, outwitting them in their own game. If they have force, we have brains. Identifying the solution to a problem is not enough. The true challenge is overturning the status quo, given that someone, presumably powerful, is benefiting from it. The regime which has vested interest in the status quo promised to cure the cancer of Latin America. It promised to cure the gap between the haves and have-not. But instead, they did the same that pigs did in Orwell's Animal Farm allegory. They fell in love with power, turned around and oppressed the realm, just like the past regime did. The regime has been able to establish a stout oligarchical system despite only producing an absolute misrule, because the military creatures are fed petrodollars for repressing the student movement. Antonio Cala, a Spaniard humanist, said, dictatorships present themselves behind armor because they must win. Democracies present themselves naked because they need to convince. And this is my dream. I dream of a Latin American without a military. The misdistribution of resources and opportunities has undermined the development of the region. The main asset of Latin America is human capital, but it has not been quite exploited because we live under the constant threat of a military coup. My region suffers from a tradition of political instability, given that the military strongmen rise and oppress if they are not content. I dream of a Latin America free of creatures that shoot against the people they swore to protect. I envision Latin America free of a military, a political stable region that concentrates in approaching those whose development has been neglected and have been historically disenfranchised of equal opportunities. We should not concentrate in buying Soviet weapons or crafting military parades. I dream of a Latin America that invests in the quality of public education and free and universal healthcare to develop a region of progress and trade, a region that votes for the better candidate instead of the most charismatic strongman. Achieving such dream is only possible through education, because education is the one thing that you will never lose. Hard power will never strip you of your ideas. Education is a mean of ownership. It is a one mean to be the master of your fate, because the students of Venezuela are owners of their future. They have decided to forge their present today. We have suffered from all sorts of military dictatorships, all the way to the left, from Castro to Chavez, to even the right, in Augusto Pinochet in Chile. Any country, in Dominican Republic, Trujillo, Manuel Noriega in Panama, Somoza Garcia in Nicaragua. Every Latin American country has endured this. But my dream is not too far away, and this is not unattainable. Costa Rica has already disbanded their army. And Uruguay, nominated to most progressive country by The Economist of 2013, has elected a progressive president that is rich beyond imagination because he drives his own car. He drives in his old house. He lacks superfluous material possessions. And that makes him the president I dream for my region. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to open now the floor for question and answers. You can address the speaker or you can just address everyone, whatever you want.
Hi everyone, my name is Bianjana and I'm from Nepal, and I have a question for Alfredo. You mentioned that there's a 444% increase in murders. So what are the nature of these murders? Is it just rampant random killings, or is it political targeted kind of killings? And if you don't mind, can I ask you a second question? I understand that Venezuela has one of the most potent oil reserves in South America. I also know that they kind of subsidize and they sell the oil slightly, cheaper to neighboring countries. How do you feel about that, and how do Venezuelans feel about that?
Can I answer your second question first? Do I need to use the microphone?
Yeah, just.
Well, I will answer your second question first. I was actually going to say that, and I think oil, I actually disagree, and I hope Kuwait handles it well. I mean, oil is a very dangerous resource, especially when you have a surplus. That creates such an inflow of capital and liquid capital, and that only fuels corruption. And that's very dangerous. I mean, that has all the potential for conflict. Having reserves doesn't mean anything. We have the biggest reserve in the country, but we're bankrupt, absolutely bankrupt. The institution that is in charge of handling oil, it's not capable of doing it because they haven't appointed the right officials, and we're losing money now. Not content with this, we give oil away. We give oil away to Cuba because their political insight of how to handle an authoritarian regime. We give oil for free to China and to Russia. They do some shows in exchange, but there's really no substance behind it. The only reason we give oil for free is because they have the veto power, and pretty much secures the authoritarian regime in the international arena. And your first question about murder, yes, there has been. The thing is that it's all sorts of murders, but there's one accusation I think that actually true is that the government has not taken care of it on purpose as a public policy to produce a brain drain. Everyone that has means to leave leaves the country because of how dangerous it is. So the government adopts this as a public policy to scare all who can get a decent education, all who have the intellectual know-how, how to stand against them. And then, I mean, there's also a difference between the haves and the not. There's a lot of necessity, and that also fuels murder. But the main two reasons are because the main reason actually is that there's absolute impunity. With a 92% of unresolved murders, you can get away with it and that creates the havoc we have right now. I hope I answered.
Next question.
Okay, I guess I have to. Hi, hello everyone. My name's Kalika Anderson. I have two questions, but for two different people. I'm sorry, I'm bad with names. One is for the lady that was talking about the oil spills in Nigeria. I'm curious as to where did they get the licensing to go in and go in that oil, to dig out that oil field? Like,
I mean, I'm not sure directly if it's due to licensing, but I know it's due to connections with the government. A big issue going on currently in Nigeria is the corruption in the government. It's very rampant. It's in all levels. And it's a matter of, do you know the right person? Who do you know? You know the right person? You have free leeway to pretty much do as you want, as long as whoever it is getting paid as some sort of benefit of it. Yeah.
and I mean, I know that the system is not like it is here in America,
Mhm.
but the health department doesn't say or fine anyone,
I mean,
even with the people that live
and
around there.
I'm telling you right now, it's all linked. It's all the corruption, including that we don't have a legitimate system in place that really regulates, okay, these are the people around here, this is how this is harming them. That's not done. So the people have to speak for themselves. And even the people trying to speak for themselves, that's shut down by the government of the people. The government in Nigeria shuts them down and, tries to sweep them under the rug, as I said, and pretty much pretend like it's not a problem. There have been generations of people just getting sick because of these oil spills, right? All these things are leaking into the environment, into the air. And people live miles, if not yards, close to these spills. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for bringing awareness to it. My second question is for the lady that was speaking about Egypt. You said that March is the time where they re-elect the president. Did I hear you right? Or Pharaoh?
We have an upcoming election. It's not a specific time each year or each term because of the instability in Egypt right now. Like we elected the last president. I think it was the end of June 2012, and in June 2013 there was a coup, and he was removed, and we got a temporary president. And I'm not sure exactly why it's this month, but like they're going to elect a new one soon. Yeah.
What is the how long can you be
Is
a
the term?
president? There's a term for the presidency.
Okay.
Or do they just keep going until?
All right. Well, when I studied that stuff in high school, the term was 6 years, and you can have as many re-elections as you want, and that's how we got landed with Mubarak for 30 years. When he was removed in 2011, there was talk about changing the number of terms allowed or the years. I have no idea about the current situation, but since the last president was removed, like because of the coup, the military just put him in prison after a year from his becoming president. So I don't think the term currently matters at all, and I'm sorry, I don't know how long it is right now. Thank you.
I think it's interesting how today we saw that there are so many countries that have political strife or are crumbling internally. It's interesting also with Crimea and in Ukraine how Russia came into their internal affairs. So what determines when a country, for all the people who have these kind of countries, does another power come inside and start handling your internal affairs? And how do the people in those countries perceive that kind of help from, whether it's a superpower or a neighboring country that has more influence? How is it perceived? So this is for Venezuela, Nepal, Nigeria, Egypt. Do you guys welcome the help if it gets to the kind of dire need that there is some kind of intervention required from different countries when your own government can't deal with it?
I mean, I feel like as it comes to Nigeria, I feel like, help is necessary, but I feel like sometimes it's hard to determine what help is enough help. I feel like it's easier for the people to solve the issue themselves and look to other countries and other locations as models to improve themselves. But direct, aid coming in, trying to regulate, I feel like that's also another cause for problem and controversy, to be honest.
Well, for us in Nepal, like we're surrounded on either side by India and China, which are both like huge countries, and their governments often they intervene or interfere, or somehow they're involved in what goes on in Nepal a lot. For example, one of our largest hydropower projects towards the south of our country, there's a lot of funding for that coming in from India, but it also means and it also implies that the majority of that electricity produced from that project is going to go to India. And the same thing with China. There are a lot of investments from bigger countries, Western donor countries, through like DFID from like the British government and US aid from the US government. But there is always a sense of like strings attached. There are expectations that comes with money. There's like no such thing as something coming to us for free. So there's always this expectation from larger, bigger governments from us in terms of how we develop ourselves or what they get in return for their investment. So it's problematic because self-sustaining development is a very hard thing to achieve. It takes a lot of time, but like getting help from outside also means that there are a lot of people that you're beholden to, and that's problematic.
I'd like to make a comment, please. I know I'm not from Egypt or anything, but I can answer your question. After Hosni Mubarak, which was thought to be a dictator because he stayed more than the 6 years and he went on and on and on. After the first revolution, Morsi came and they changed the constitution to be 4 years. But then after the second revolution, to oust Morsi because he was supported by a fundamentalist Islamic group that focused on something that was other than what was going to shift Egypt's focus into a new revolutionized country that was going to have a stronger economy. People saw that. So Morsi was ousted, and then now came the new president, not the new president, it's not the military, it's the Adli Mansour, he's a judge in the Constitutional Court of Egypt, and now he's just a temporary president for a new elections that's coming this month, and in it there's running the leader of the Egyptian military, Sisi, Abdel Fattah Sisi, and then there's other people. 4 years. So 4 years, yes.
I'd like to answer the question Rohan was asking. The question about support. As you heard him said that Kuwait gave us a huge amount of money for nothing. Well, we've had help like that from different countries, but I don't think that the average Egyptian felt none of that reached any average Egyptian people. It all goes to the government officials and the military. Even though, it's true we have a temporary president, but the people in charge are actually the military. What he called the second revolution, I call a coup. And a lot of protests happened because of that, because they refused to acknowledge this as a revolution. Because the military we feel that the military just wants the rule for themselves, like the presidency, which became obvious even more after Sisi is running for president. The thing is, whenever something's happening right now, we say the Sisi said this, the Sisi said that. Okay, let me tell you something. I did not know there was a president, Adli Mansour, until months after he actually became president. It's true, I was here, but still, I can see things on Facebook. I see what my friends are saying. Every once in a while, I would watch the news, but
the person who is effectively in charge is Sisi and the military. And right now, there's something everyone's been going on about for the last few days on Facebook. People have been saying that, like, protesting the bad transportation and how they spend hours on their way home from school every day. And he was saying something, Sisi said something like, try walking home or something like that. And it's been a laughingstock between us. And then just a few days from that, they opened a new luxurious club for military members for I don't know what. So the money does come, but where does it go? I have no idea. We do not feel it. It just keeps supporting the people who are in charge. And if there's another kind of support, we don't really want it. Like a military from another country coming in and like, we're going to help you. No, thank you. That's it. Thanks.
Can I just answer a question? All right, so first of all, about what you said about Adli Mansour coming out and becoming the president, it happened as soon as Morsi was ousted by the people that put him on the presidency. This is the problem of the region, of our region, because similarly, Egypt is considered, of course it's in Africa, but it's also considered as the Middle Eastern region, which I'm from. There's people that support the Muslim Brotherhood and people that are against it. People think that the Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist group and people that think the Muslim Brotherhood is actually good. I'm going to make this short for you, and the money that came from Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf countries, it didn't come in liquid cash. It came in oil, it came in support, and it came in things. So the money, like 2 billion of the 4 billion that was sent to Egypt was actually in oil and gas, which of course somebody wouldn't feel it because he would not feel it because they're not going to give you a bottle of oil or they're not going to give you a tank of gas. What's going to happen is it's going to go towards supporting the country's needs, towards that oil and gas. And that's all.
Maybe we open the floor again.
I have, it's kind of a comment, it might be a question involved. The problems with Egypt are just so complex that I wouldn't even begin to get into them right now, but the gentleman from Venezuela brought up some good points and about how petrodollars too much can cause problems in their own right. And all over the world there are problems caused by energy, the lack of energy, the rich countries when using more than they need, like this country that uses 66% of the world's population and uses like 60% of the resources, when other countries who are supplying all of this energy don't really see the benefits of it. And all too often, I'm sad to say that these corporations are often from this country and from other Western countries, and they go to a country like Nigeria where the government is not stable, where the people are not as educated and don't have the opportunities they have other places, and they just pretty much run rampant. And we're actually facing a lot of the same problems in this country. We have problems with, switching over to coal because coal they want to get every ounce of a hydrocarbon out of the ground before they start switching over to cleaner sources. So what I see here is a lot of people from a lot of countries that have so many seemingly insurmountable problems, and for better or for worse, I think the best cure for some of these problems are going to be you guys that are sitting up here and that are involved and that care about what's going on in your own countries and getting the word out, because we don't even hear in America. The media is a conglomerate on its own, and it's owned by people. And we don't even always hear of what's going on in these other countries. Like, I didn't know what was going on in Venezuela, but I was reading about what's going on in Nigeria and I think another country where Chevron actually got legislation passed in the country that made it against the law for the people to protest against what they were doing to the environment. So if they protest, they could stand to go to jail. And the only way that these companies will change their ways of doing business if they come under the light of day and the message gets out. You know, sometimes we only hear about it, like if you listen to BBC News, we may hear about some of these issues, and on the Channel 5 News, you will never hear about it. So I just want to applaud all you guys for, you know, bringing the message out and for caring about your own countries and for letting us know and for telling people what's going on, because until they get the word out and the light comes on these companies and they're shown in the world community what they're doing, you know, they won't stop until they're forced to. Like right now we're fighting an oil sands pipeline from Canada, and a lot of people don't want it, but you know, they keep it kind of quiet and then they rush it through at the last minute, so the fight continues.
Adding on to what the gentleman just said, the global relationship between like oil and its consumption often like overlooks countries like Nepal that aren't producers of oil, don't consume a very large amount of oil. We have one of the smallest carbon footprints in the world, and yet our nature, our natural resources are being completely devastated by global warming. Almost all of our glaciers have melted. There's massive floodings every year. There are like droughts and famine that is caused by global warming, even though like we have almost all of our energy from hydroelectricity. And this problem makes us realize that it's not just the countries that are producing and prospecting the oils or the companies that are invested in it, but it's a global thing, because it's the consequences of our actions don't fall within our borders. The consequences of our actions go like throughout the world. So there needs to be more focus on the damage that we're doing beyond our borders, I feel like, especially with oil.
I just want to say one more thing about oil. It's going to be rather quick. I said that it's an incredibly dangerous thing to have oil and to have that influx of cash. But it is too easy to blame Chevron and blame Excel and blame all the governments. I mean, there's also a part of civic responsibility that is often ignored. And we need to take a stand against it, and we need to take some responsibility for it. The oil is a commodity, and it responds to a market. There's such a demand for oil because everybody drives. And I once heard a mayor of Bogota in Colombia say one of the most striking things, and he said, a developed country is not one in which every citizen drives a car. It's a country in which every citizen drives public transportation. And that's where the problem really comes down, and that's what is really often ignored. I mean, it's too easy to blame the big guys. They do have a massive amount of blame, but it's a harder exercise to look inside you and be more introspective. That's what I'm saying.
In addition to what he's saying, he's very right. It's very easy to blame, you know, the people on the top, but I mean, especially when it comes to Nigeria, part of the problem too is the corruption in the government. It trickles down. I feel that Nigeria has the easiest chance to be just like Kuwait, and use that oil for good, and use that oil as a means to, you know, increase, you know, trade in the country and just better it as a whole. There's lots of potential in Nigeria, but the right people need to be put in place. The right things need to happen, like you said, and a lot of that starts with the citizens itself. So.
Okay. I particularly wanted to ask about Kuwait and Nigeria, and going right off of what you just said. So considering that the oil could be used to benefit the people and the economy of Nigeria, what you proposed initially was to put a fine on companies that spill in the Gulf, which would, again, reduce the negative externality of spilling, but at the same time might influence the companies to drill less, which would, I mean, do you think that that would influence the companies to drill less, and do you think that could negatively impact Nigeria's economy? I mean, having less export.
Honestly, I don't believe it would. I feel like he had mentioned, oil is big. Everyone wants oil. That's not stopping anyone. The fines, yeah, sure. Fines are gonna, make people a little bit more careful, but I don't think it's gonna stop any sort of, or it's gonna, decrease the amount of drilling going on. Only because everyone needs oil. What it will do, however, I feel like is it will contain what's really going on and maybe allow, more monitoring as far as, investigations, more monitoring in terms of where's this money really going, what are our invests, what are we benefiting from, how are we getting this money, where is it trickling out to, where is it coming in from. But I don't think it will decrease trade in any way, to be honest, because oil is one of those big things that everyone needs. And it's unfortunate, but there's so much that it wouldn't stop them. And honestly, money is like liquid to a lot of these big companies. Paying these fines is like nothing to them, honestly. That's why I feel like they continue to, they continue to exploit, these reserves that are actually just rapidly there, especially in Nigeria.
I want to comment on that you just asked. I'm from Ecuador, and we also have a big oil reserve. Actually, one of our biggest oil reserves, it's under a national reserve, one of the most biodiverse spots on Earth. And there's a lot of controversy going on whether if the government should let companies take out the oil, or should the government protect the rainforest and don't let companies take out the oil. So actually, what my government did is they actually ask aid for other countries, because the amount of money Ecuador will be getting from those companies and the oil, he asked aid from other countries to give that money to Ecuador in order for them to preserve the rainforest and still be making money, take care of the environment, and leave the oil there. So I think part of it to stop other countries feeling the need of oil, because there are other ways to get energy. They have electric cars, hybrid cars, different resources. It's an education. Like somebody said before, education is very important.
Right. So I said I had a question also for the gentleman from Kuwait, which was, you spoke a lot about Kuwait eventually developing different products that could be sold initially in the Gulf and then spreading to the rest of the world that could be rather successful. Do you think that Kuwait, despite obviously its incentive to keep producing oil, do you think it could also produce oil-free technologies, environmentally friendly technologies? Do you think that's plausible, and do you think that it happens soon?
Well, currently, Kuwait does have other technologies that are oil-free, but the oil itself is 90% of the income of Kuwait. So, like the other 10%, when I'm making 90%, which is billions of dollars, do you think that I'd leave the billions of dollars and go to the other 10%? That's not making me more than $50 million. So, I do believe if and only if we find a way to make these technologies and make these businesses that give us so much money that we wouldn't need oil, we would it would just change. Like people would start changing towards that path. Right now, I don't see anybody wanting to change to that path. I don't see any government wanting to change to that path, not only in Kuwait and most of the world and in that region. What the difference between Kuwait and Nigeria is that Nigeria, the oil is drilled by private companies, and whatever is drilled is like you own the land, you own the oil. For us, it's not you own the land, you own the oil. It's the oil is the government's, the oil is the country's, and it's a shared wealth between the people. So and it's drilled by the government, by a governmental company. So the oil is drilled, it's given to the people. It's given to education, which is the most important thing, like everybody agrees on. Education would eliminate his problem, it would eliminate Venezuela's problem, Nigeria's problem, Nepal's problem, our problem, Italy's problem, India's problem, and everybody else. So what I'm saying to answer your question is the path is very, very small to go to non-oil related technologies.
I think we should maybe one more question. Is there one more question from the floor? Yeah, Hannah.
Thank you. I don't mean to grill you, but I'm actually very interested in what's happening in Venezuela because I'm from Nepal, like I mentioned earlier. In 2006, we had a similar uprising against our king, our monarch. So what are your expectations of what, the student uprising happening in Venezuela? And you also mentioned that you dream of a demilitarized Venezuela, and how do you think that's possible? In how many years, and what steps do you think would be necessary?
I mean, I wish I could give you a concise answer about that and give you a set amount of days and years. I mean, I'll tell you tomorrow, but it's clearly not. Well, to demilitarize Venezuela, that's a slow process. I mean, you cannot just do it at once. The first step is obviously cutting their political influence and separating the institutions, going back to a true democracy that's not just elections, it's a separation of powers, and taking some from a presidential office. I mean, that's the first step is going back to a democracy of separation of powers, and when the military is an institution, they have nothing to do with politics. I mean, that's an important step. Regarding the, and that's the first step, then is slowly cutting back. We don't need it. I mean, there's no point of it. I mean, who's going to attack us? I mean, there's really no point. The only thing they're used for is to repress the students. That's what they're trained for, and that's what they're paid for. This leads me to your first question, the students' insurgency. It got to a point now that the economy is so wrecked that the more their increase is so dangerous, like becoming the capital murder of the world, that is a point of an inflection point. It's either now or it's not going to happen. I mean, I'm not an idealist, and we're not going to overthrow the government by tomorrow and establish a perfect liberal democracy. But as I tried to explain before, there's a basis of support that sustain any government, and you can say international support, military, the economy, and it's a slow process that takes by weakening each of these pillars of support. And what you want to do as an opposition, as a student movement, because we do, the student movement represents the opposition, we are doing the heavy lifting, it's to transfer those bases of support. I mean, we already pretty much have the upper hand in international community. I mean, we just have to keep pushing for that and getting sanctions approved, not sanctions like an embargo that would choke us, but sanctions against their bank accounts, the bank accounts of the leaders, making them, declaring them in the international community persona non grata. I mean, that's step by step. Regarding the economics, I think it's immoral to pay taxes to this government. I think it's absolutely immoral. I mean, that money only comes back to fire us. So that's a way of, they are choking themselves economically wise by not producing, by the oil industry. And I mean, it takes quite a bit of time. And the most important step in any uprising is organization. You cannot just go in like crazy. I mean, there's a bright author, Gene Sharp, in his framework for liberation from dictatorship to democracy, is the book called, and he has a series of steps. And the media really doesn't cover this, and it really portrays the student movement as an uprising, as a disorganized uprising, and it's really not. There's all sorts of steps that we're following. And I'm telling you, right now, we already went over the organization, and we're pretty much organized and centralized. It's weakening the government, and they're gonna fall eventually. I mean, already you can see the fractures among the government. They're not. They sell this picture that they are this unit, but they're not. I mean, there's the military pulling in there. There's the Cubans pulling in there. There's two major fractions that have risen inside the party. Chavez was the glue to all of that. Once it's gone, you see a fractionalization. We, as our job as a opposition, is to show ourselves as we really want to be in government. I mean, we are pacifists. We do resist with non-violence. We have no weapons. We don't believe in that. And we will go for democracy. And there's often this critique of the opposition that it's not centralized. I actually think that's an asset. We're not centralized because it means that we accept every range of political thought. We have from left to the right, and we show that picture because that's what we represent. We represent a disunity inside a unity. We believe in democracy, but we believe in every train of thought, and that's our strength. And I really think that's where our strength lays. I mean, it's going to be a tough process, but I'm sure we're going to get there. I wish I could give you a date, but we're going to get there.
Thank you.